going on, gardeners? On today's 2-minute garden tip, I'm going to share with you all a common mistake that even experienced gardeners make that unnecessarily ends their growing seasons months early. And that mistake is not succession planting our annual vegetables. That's because the overwhelming majority of the annual vegetables that we plant have shorter lifespans than the total duration of our growing season. Most gardeners will start a single crop of cucumbers, tomatoes, zucchini, and melons from seed early in the spring, and then they will fight against their better judgment to try and keep these single plantings alive the entire growing season. And they wind up just fighting against nature because all of these plants, for the most part, have shorter lives than their growing season itself. Cucumbers, zucchini, and other summer squash plants only have a natural lifespan of about 3 to 4 months. So while they look great right now in early May, come early July, they are going to start naturally dying off because they will have reached the end of their natural lifespan. Determinate tomato plants, like the ones you see in this bed right here, are going to run their course and start naturally dying back in late June here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Even indeterminate tomatoes start succumbing to our hot, humid weather here come mid to late July. Even the most disease-resistant indeterminate tomatoes cannot survive here past late August. But even when I lived in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and summers were a lot less wet and a lot less oppressive, the indeterminate tomatoes that I would plant in late April would still start naturally getting weak and beginning to die back come September. And there was still an entire month left of growing season when my tomato plants would naturally start giving up the ghost. And don't even get me started with melon vines. Once they start producing their crop in July, they're toast, and there is still a lot more summer left where you could be growing. Once these plants start naturally dying back, the natural inclination of most gardeners is to somehow fight nature and keep them alive. But the fact is, these old, tired plants that are reaching end of life start becoming much more susceptible to pests and disease, and nature knows it. And the pests and disease know to attack these old, dying plants. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Rather than fight against nature and try to rescue plants that are at end of life, what you should be doing is every 4 to 6 weeks or so, sow a new crop of your various plants where your growing season is longer than their natural lifespans. My tomatoes and cucumbers and squash plants haven't even started fruiting yet, but I already have another succession plant coming up right behind. So I have cucumbers that are about ready to start again now that my first crop of cucumbers are starting to produce their first cucumbers. I have more tomato plants that are going to go behind the tomato plants that you see right here, because I know these tomato plants are naturally going to become very susceptible to disease in late June and early July when they get tired. But when I keep new plantings of tomatoes behind them, these new young vibrant plants are just naturally less susceptible to pests and disease. So rather than plant your entire garden out in a single wave and fight against pests and disease pressure from these old, tired, dying plants, plant your garden in multiple waves. Succession plant them. Split up your crop at all different times. That way the plants in your garden will overall be average younger, and they will be less susceptible to pests and diseases. And as an added bonus, you won't get your entire harvest all at once. You'll stagger your harvest so you won't be overwhelmed all in the beginning and then have your harvest fade out later in the season. You'll get more of a harvest more consistently throughout the season, and you will be able to get a good harvest months later into the future. How many successions of each plant that you grow is going to depend on the plant and where you live. Here in North Carolina, I've learned over the years that I can plant 2 different crops of tomatoes, about 4 different crops of cucumbers and zucchini, about 2 different crops of watermelons, and about 3 different crops of smaller honeydews and other smaller melons. Whereas my pepper plants and my eggplants will generally last the whole season. So that is your homework. You have to figure out your unique area, but whatever you do, no matter where you live, you can almost certainly benefit from succession planting and not putting everything all out in the beginning of the season and then try to limp and keep them alive throughout the fall, because they probably won't make it. So by succession planting your annual vegetables like this, you will have a longer harvest that will reach deeper into the season, and you will have overall healthier, younger plants that are less susceptible to pests and disease. And that's today's 2-minute garden tip. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.